Good morning. This is your Sunday Slander. Have you been slandered today? If you haven't, please press 1. If you pressed 1, then I want you to know that even though I didn't have the best outing on Thursday, it's nothing compared to how terrible it was for Andy and Pedro. That's right. The man sitting in front of you knows that Orlando was fortunate to get 22 points out of his backup running back, but also at the same time acknowledges that Andy started Fant and he started Patrick. What position does Patrick play? You see, I didn't look into it because I don't really care what the position is. I just know that you scored 4 points off of 2 positions. He's a wide receiver. Tim Patrick with 1 point and Fant with 3. And then even worse than Andy was Pedro, who put up his normal 3 players, which is Gordon, Sutton, and the kicker McManus, and only managed to get 16. So when I look over at the game between Orlando and I see that I'm down 22-4, I say, okay, my defense got 4 points. First of all, that very first drive of the game, I don't know if anybody remembers it, the very first drive of the Denver and the Cleveland game just the other day, I thought the Denver defense was going to be in the negative by the second half. By the beginning of the second half, just the way Cleveland was moving the ball. That's another thing that I noticed too. Everybody was moving the ball for the Browns. Everybody was. So I don't think Johnson is special. I'm looking at you, Jay. It's very insulting what you said about my coat. It's made out of your mother's pubic hair. Fuck you, Jay. You know why? Because I've already explained to you the concept of the backup. You're just trolling me at this point. But what I really find funny is how you guys start off fantasy seasons with all this confidence, right? We set up the draft. You do your little routine where you try to pretend like you know college players and you know who's hot and who's not. In the middle of your draft, you try to have total silence in the house. If someone says anything, you go, shh, I'm doing my fantasy draft. Try to sound real professional, real calculated. And then you fast forward to week 7 and you're fighting for your fantasy life once again. Everything's always a joke when I initially say it. Everything is a joke when I say it. When I say people are done, people scoff at it. People just walk away. They just go, whatever. He's just talking shit. He's just hating on me. Ed and J. Ray face each other later today. Charles Lee J. Ray and Show Me Your TDs. This victory will feel like childbirth for one of these gentlemen. Why will it feel like childbirth? Because we fast forward from the beginning of the fantasy season where they're so confident, and then just imagine just the next scene is just a dramatic, pathetic victory by one of them during this week. And that pretty much shows you their entire season, and it's just going to be their second win. You remember I think it was the preacher in Fight Club. It was either not the preacher, it was either the priest or the Major D. I don't remember that. There was a side fight and it was a glorious victory by one of them. And then, when they beat the guy, you remember that they were just like, yeah, yes. And he was hugging the guy that he beat. So it felt like this real intimate moment where it wasn't really about violence. It was just about like some weird triumph that he was conquering. That's what it's going to be for both of these guys. For one of these guys, at least, unless they tie. The seasons are over, gentlemen. And when I tell you your seasons are over, I'm not saying it just to say it. I take a look at your schedules. I know who's going to face who soon. I know who's about to go on a losing streak soon. I'm not a Walter Mercado, as Hensel likes to call me. And Hensel, by the way, is in his deathbed too, because Hensel is 1-4-1, and he's facing Joelicus Maximus today for his fantasy life as well. And I'm going to confidently say something right now, because even though if I say this, I don't want people to think like, oh, this is, you're mentioning too much, and if he doesn't see it, don't. No. These installments are put out in the free market of the fantasy ecosystem. We just throw them out there, and at the time that we throw it out there, we doubt very much that most of you are watching it right before the fantasy games. We think you catch on to it later on in the day, or maybe later on in the week, and then maybe you see how this opinion aged. But Enzo's got Alvin Kamara on his bench right now, and Alvin Kamara plays on Monday. It's very interesting because he's got Joe Mixon in there at 1 o'clock, and he's got Chase Edmonds in there at 4:25. If at 1 o'clock Joe Mixon is in there, what does Hensel do? Does Hensel take out Chase Edmonds if he then sees it before the 4 o'clock games? He puts out Chase Edmonds and then puts in Alvin Kamara? Or does Hensel not see it? I know he's not going to take out Darrell Henderson, who's projected to get 16 points. But Hensel, the man who insults my fantasy knowledge by calling me Walter Mercado, is also about to go down at the hands of the man who is the surprise team of the year. So this goes both ways. If I'm discussing 3 people who are on the verge of death, then we have to talk about the people who are on the verge of victory. If Joe wins, Joe then becomes 6-1. Well, that's a very strong position to be in, especially if Rollo Tomassi loses. Then he would have a 2-game lead over Rollo Tomassi. Actually, a full game, I think, because Rollo has a tie. But this is a very impressive season for Joe thus far, and I think if he sticks his dick in Hensel's ass today, I think it's a statement that Joe is here to stay at least till the playoffs. As you know, in this league, it's very difficult to miss the playoffs when you won over 6 games. It's just a thing in this league, and if Joe's already there by the end of this week, then we can pencil Joe in for a playoff spot. This is your Sunday morning slander, so I'm really all over the place. So let me give you some standings. At top of the Gremlin division, you have Joe Elicus Maximus at 5-1. Then you have Rollo Tomassi at 4-1-1. Team Bundy at 4-2. You have Ewok Rape. Always happens. Ewok Rape at 3-2-1. Charles Lee J. Ray at 1-5-0. Over on the Child's Please division, you have Andy at top with 4-1-1, Goku with 3-3-0, Labamba at 2-4-0, Hensel at 1-4-1, and Show Me Your TDs at 1-5-0. Let's go back to the matchup between Orlando and I. Orlando was very excited about what had happened during that game, and I give Orlando all the credit in the world. Yeah, he picked up the backup of one of the backups or whatever, because obviously it's a timeshare, Jay. Remember that. It's a timeshare in Cleveland, so the situation's a bit different. As I said, you back up your number one investment. This week, I deemed it necessary to pick up Sam Darnold, who I think is my only defense against Kyler Murray. I have a feeling that Sam Darnold is going to have a very strong game against the New York Giants. I'm not saying his output is going to be exactly what Kyler Murray's is or better than what Kyler Murray's is. I just think he's going to put up a fight this week. I think he's going to use his legs. I think he's going to get in the end zone with his legs, or at least I hope he does. So I had to pick up Sam Darnold, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Orlando picked Johnson up just this week. Let's see. He picked Johnson up. It shows the date, I think. Yeah, on the 17th, he picked up. I picked him up on a Sunday. Look at that. Well, look, some people just get fortunate. They pick people up. But like I said, everybody on the team ran. All right, everybody on the team was able to advance the ball. If he gets the carries, then yes. You know, you don't get to. Okay, I even though I know that Jay's trolling, the one thing that you don't get to do, if you're anyone else in the league, that you're not trolling me with the whole "did you back up your stuff?" If I lose to Orlando, then this basically means, this is exactly what I mean. The amount of carries that Johnson got gave him the edge. I'm not going to be able to plug up all holes. Obviously, Orlando is more vested in the backfield of the Browns than I am, considering the fact that he picked up Chubb. That was his very first pick, and of course Kareem Johnson wasn't mine. Sorry, not Kareem Johnson. It was Kareem Hunt. So he gets 22 points from that. But you know what, Orlando? Even though you're excited, I gotta say that I'm a little bit more excited about what Corey Davis does today, which is most likely nothing. And why do I say that? Well, because Corey Davis is done basically nothing. He hasn't gotten more than 10 receptions in a game. Yes, he got 17 points in week 4, but I'm more interested in that. I'm also more interested in what Zach Ertz does, since you just got him off of a trade with Ed. He puts no fear in my heart as well. Allen Robinson puts no fear in my heart fucking either, because he hasn't gotten double-digit points this entire season. 8, which he scored in week 2, is his season high. So Orlando's team, of course, riddled by the bye week, as well as I have been riddled by it, is in a position where maybe he's in the driver's seat because he scored so many points right now. But in my opinion, I don't think he's that far ahead of us. If this victory, if Bundy is gonna get this victory, then this is gonna be a slow, very close matchup. But we've won 4 games. We're not in the best condition we're not in the best condition this week, but I'd say that we have a pretty good chance because Orlando's team isn't strong. It just really depends on what Kyler Murray does. If Kyler Murray scores 40 points later today, then it's going to be very difficult for us to win. We're just going to be straight up. It's going to be very difficult for us to win. Injuries and buys happen, so of course, you mitigate that from being a factor of your season by actually putting together wins, and that's what the fuck we've done over the last month. So before Jay wants to clown me, I think he needs to consider the fact that he's playing for his fucking life. So look. You got Goku against Team Bundy. You got Highlander against Ewok Rape. You got La Bamba going up against Rollo Thomas C. You got Show Me Your TDs against Charles Lee J. Ray. And you got Platanos going up against Joelicus Maximus. These are your matchups for later today. Again, I predict that this week Hensel will meet his demise, right? I mean, he's got to put up a good fight against Joe because he's projected to get 96 points, and he'll be projected to get a lot more if he puts in Alvin Kamara. But I predict that Joe should be getting that job done. And as far as the actual death match, which I am very interested in, and I'm very interested in this because if anybody remembers, these were the 2 fantasy players whom I was approaching about that 3-team trade. I was ignored, and I will admit, would that trade have been so beneficial to Ed had he done it? Not over the past few weeks, because Gronk's been injured, he's been hurt, so that wouldn't have panned out great. But see, you got to think about later in the season. You got to think about when Gronk is there. You got to think about all those red zones. You got to think about, they try to save him for the playoffs or whatever, but they give him the ball to give him those reps, and he's going to score points. So I admit that the Gronk thing wouldn't have worked for Ed, in terms of immediacy, but it would have still, it would still have been a good trade. And of course, I wanted Stephon Diggs from J-Ray. But I relish in the fact that these 2 are now in panic mode, especially Ed, I think, because I think Ed really expected to win this year. I think Jay's been dead before the beginning of this year. The memes about Jay losing his soul isn't a joke, And I'll close this out by saying this to Jay. Jay, I think at this point, the most noticeable thing about any time you say anything in the chat is this. How is someone without a soul able to hold a phone in their hand and put together a text message. If you saw the movie Ghost, you remember that Patrick Swayze had to be trained in the station. You know, the guy got all upset. He was knocking over everything in the train because he was taking over his territory. And then later on, he trains Patrick Swayze, and then he ends up doing the whole thing with the pen. What stage are you at? How did you do it? Because a man without a soul isn't supposed to send text messages. So I'm a little confused about that, Jay, and I need some clarification. Hopefully you can clarify it, because you'll have a ton of time to think about it, because you lose. See, because I don't care who loses this game. I don't care which one of you it is. When the Joker gives the three goons the stick and tells them that they're having tryouts, he doesn't bet on the game. He doesn't stand by. He walks away. He has other things to do. And it's the same in this case. Gentlemen, we've got tryouts, right? It's time for some aggressive expansion. A couple weeks ago, when I said you were done, maybe you had your doubts, maybe you had your hopes. But when life becomes death, and death becomes life, go fuck yourselves.